My name is David Turner. I'm 52 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb outside Denver, Colorado. 6 years ago, I married a woman I loved with everything I had. What I didn't expect was that her son would spend 6 years treating me like I didn't belong in my own home. If you'd told me back then that the day would come when that same young man's face would go pale in front of everyone he respected, I would have told you that you didn't know Ryan. But I didn't know what I was building either. Not yet. This is the story of how staying quiet almost broke me, and how the truth finally set things right. When I met Karen, she was a widow raising a 15-year-old boy named Ryan on her own. Her husband had passed young, and she was tired in the way only a single parent understands. I didn't try to replace his father. I never once asked Ryan to call me Dad. I just showed up. I drove him to baseball practice when Karen worked late. I sat through every school play, even the boring ones. I helped him with his college applications at 2 in the morning. For a while, I thought we had something real. Not perfect, but real. The first crack came the year Ryan turned 21. He got a job at a car dealership downtown, started wearing sharper clothes, started talking about real success, like it was something he'd invented. He'd make small comments at dinner. Some people work jobs, David. Some people build careers. I let it go. I told myself he was young, finding his place in the world. Then it got sharper. He'd introduce me to his friends as my mom's husband, never anything more. Once at a birthday dinner, someone asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Ryan cut in and said, "He drives a delivery truck. It's fine, it's honest work." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either, and he knew it. The real turn came at Karen's sister's wedding. The whole family was there, cousins, uncles, people I'd known for years. Ryan had a few drinks in him, and when someone asked about the family business, he laughed and pointed at me. "Oh, David's not part of any of that. He's just around. Mom needed someone steady after Dad died. That's about it." The table went quiet. Karen's face dropped. I just smiled, picked up my glass, and said nothing. That night, in the car, Karen apologized for him. I told her it was fine. It wasn't fine. But I'd learned a long time ago that some battles aren't worth fighting at a wedding. It kept building after that. Little comments turned into open jokes. At Thanksgiving, Ryan called me the understudy in front of his girlfriend's parents. Everyone laughed except Karen, who squeezed my hand under the table. I remember sitting in my truck that night in the driveway, not ready to go inside yet. I wasn't angry. I was just tired. Tired of being the quiet man in the corner of a family I'd given 6 years to. I thought about leaving. Not Karen. Never Karen. But leaving the idea that I needed anyone's approval to know what I'd built with my life. That was the night I decided something had to change. Not through an argument. Through the truth. Here's what Ryan never knew. Before I met Karen, I spent 20 years building a small logistics company from nothing. 1 truck, then 5. Then a fleet of 40. I never talked about it at family dinners because I didn't need to. Success was never something I wore like a badge. 3 years into our marriage, a mid-sized dealership group ran into financial trouble. My company had been quietly handling their vehicle transport contracts for over a decade. When the group needed a buyer to keep the business alive and the employees working, I stepped in, through a holding company, under a name that wasn't mine. The dealership Ryan worked at, the one he was so proud to build his career in, I owned it. Quietly. Completely. He'd been clocking in every day, mocking the man who signed his paycheck, and never once knew it. I hadn't planned to use that information, until the day he crossed a line he couldn't take back. It happened at the company's annual awards dinner, an event I usually skipped, staying in the background as always. But this year, the regional director personally invited me, unaware of the family connection, simply because I was listed as the principal owner on record. Ryan was being honored that night for Employee of the Year. He stood at the podium, confident, sharp-suited, thanking his mother for always believing in him. And then, looking out into the crowd, he spotted me sitting quietly near the back. He smiled that same old smile and said into the microphone, loud enough for the room to hear, "And to my mom's husband, thanks for coming, even though you probably don't know what any of this is." The room laughed politely, not knowing what he'd just said. I didn't laugh. I stood up. I hadn't planned to speak that night, but 6 years of silence has a way of finding the right moment on its own. I walked up toward the stage, not rushed, not angry, just steady. The regional director, a woman named Patricia who'd worked with my holding company for years, caught my eye and gave a small nod. She knew exactly who I was. She'd just been waiting, like I had, for the right time. Actually, I said, taking the microphone gently from a stunned Ryan, I do know what this is. I've known for 11 years. I own this dealership group. The room went silent. Ryan's smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. His face went pale, the kind of pale you only see when someone realizes the ground under them was never solid to begin with. That's not possible, he said quietly, almost to himself. Patricia stepped forward and confirmed it to the room, that David Turner, principal owner of the holding company, had personally kept this dealership group afloat during its hardest years and had insisted on staying anonymous to every employee, including his own stepson. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just looked at Ryan and said, I never needed you to know who I was. I needed you to respect the man in front of you, whoever you thought he was. I handed the microphone back and walked to my seat. Ryan came to the house 2 weeks later. He didn't apologize with words at first. He just sat across from me at the kitchen table and asked quietly, Why didn't you ever say anything? I told him the truth. Some people build things loudly. I built mine quietly because I never needed anyone's applause to know its worth. I just wish it hadn't taken this long for him to see the man who was there every single day, long before he knew what that man had built. We're not perfect now, but he calls me David with respect these days, not as a punchline, and sometimes that's worth more than any title ever could be.